Param Guru, Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, has discussed that this world is like a museum, and we can understand it if we just consider it. We know so many corridors of the museum, so many displays, but one thing that we don't know very well is the curator or the proprietor of the museum. We sometimes become fascinated how intricately things are working, but still are so foolish as to insult the curator by denying his existence. Anyway, there are many observations that we could make to better understand our situation. So I think I'll try and set forward a few of these. One thing is that we can notice the feature of motion in this existence all around us. So I'd like to consider motion apart from the even more bewildering aspect of time. Motion can be seen in any natural body. For example, a ball. A ball has the tendency, if it's not in motion, to remain at rest. And if it's contacted by another mover or an entity in motion, then that ball can begin to move. There's a law in physics that was formulated by Newton that a body at rest will remain at rest in the absence of contact with a body in motion. So from this it becomes obvious that we can understand the sequence of mover and move. Something that is at rest, in order to begin to move, it has to be touched by a mover. We can examine everything around us. For example, if we see a ball rolling down the street, we can understand that the cause of that ball coming down the street is a bat. That bat is also being moved by a boy. In this way we can understand the process of mover moving the mover like this. Now the point is, this sequence of mover and mover can't go on to infinity. There has to be a first mover. If there's no first mover, there can be no subsequent motion. And this would be plain and false. We see there's motion. The point is there has to be first mover. Then there can be subsequent motion. So this first mover, everybody has conceived and understood as God. Now, some people have put forward the theory that motion can go on to infinity, mover, like that. The confusion is resulting from the fact that God is infinite. We could say that motion can go on to the infinite, but it can't go on to infinity. There has to be the first mover, or the whole thing is simply not going to operate. Anyway, there are many analyses that we can put like this, and there are many examples we can give. Just like many years ago, I had a friend who was very fond of dominoes. He had a large collection of dominoes. So sometimes children stack these dominoes. Say dominoes are 2 inches. You stack them 1 inch apart, you can get a long chain of dominoes from one room even into another. Then if you get at the end of that chain, simply push on the first domino, and that'll knock the second domino, third domino, like this. You can walk into the next room, and around the corner will come a chain of falling dominoes. And this is something children sort of stare at in awe, how this is happening. This is like the process of cause and effect. And people, if they have any sense of, or they have any intelligence, should have some awe when they see this process of motion going on all around us. So much inexplicable motion. Anyway, the point behind all this again is that we should analyze how all this is taking place and not simply be bewildered by it, because we're caught up in the middle of this process and we have to have some understanding of just what our position is. This analysis of motion is similar to another sort of analysis that we can make. Uh, that is, in the way that things are ordered, or in the way that so-called natural bodies, this natural bodies is a term that's been used in philosophy, meaning simply some material entity. Natural bodies which have no intelligence act repeatedly in the same way for achieving the same result. There are many examples here again. For example, the large body of water, the ocean, can be observed. And it will be seen that water is evaporated from the ocean. And by evaporation, the water becomes pure. It's drawn up into the clouds, and the clouds carry the water over the land. Then the clouds have a tendency to distribute this water, especially on the high places like mountains. And from there, the water flows down in rivers, and all moving, non-moving, living entities are nourished by this water. Then again, the dirty water flows into the ocean and can be purified again. So this process is going on everywhere, and it goes on in the same sequence over and over and over again. Now, the point is that supposedly something without intelligence cannot act for an intelligent end. That's all right, but that means that then these non-intelligent things have to be manipulated by an entity with intelligence. Again, this entity is known everywhere as God. This conception that most people have of God is very shallow, but there's really a tremendous subject matter, to put it well, not to express it very nicely, there's tremendous field for investigation. Anyway, this should be the prime interest of the living entity with the human form. Human beings are a kind of conscious being distinguished from so many other kinds of conscious beings. For example, we can see that a dog is conscious. He knows that he needs food. He knows that he needs to defend. So many things. Anyway, the human beings have consciousness, which is obviously very much developed. But they're in the middle of all this phenomenal museum. They can wonder how things are being ordered. And this is their duty, to wonder and to make some positive investigation. There's one particular display that struck me the other day. A few years ago, I was involved in some sport called skin diving. So probably everybody knows in skin diving there's an apparatus called scuba gear. And maybe you can picture some little so-called frogman blowing bubbles down deep under the water. The only link that he has with the living world, at least his world, is this little bottle of air. And there's so many dangers, so many fierce aquatic animals, so many things which could finish him at any moment. Anyway, this scuba means self-contained underwater breathing apparatus. Now the analogy here is that just like this breathing apparatus can keep a little man alive deep in the ocean, similarly the process of Krishna consciousness can keep a living entity alive deep in this ocean of ignorance. Because the whole world is sitting at the bottom of an ocean of forgetfulness or nescience. People don't have the consciousness to even wonder at what they are or what sort of situation this is. So practically they're like dead people. They're just sort of floating around. Their lungs are filled with water, and they can never rise to the surface in that condition. So this self-contained underwater breathing apparatus, the idea struck me. I was thinking I should pick up my these Malaka. So I thought, let me pick up my scuba gear and swim back to the temple. The analogy is that the people with this link of Krishna consciousness, they can get the water out of their lungs and they can revive their consciousness. and they have every facility for rising to the surface of the ocean of ignorance, of this material existence. The material existence is called ignorance because people are in the most precarious condition, and they take no note of it. For example, we can see by any kind of thoughtfulness that at any moment this body, which has been called by Bhaktisiddhanta as a fleshy tabernacular entity, it can be mutilated at any moment by so many forces in nature. Some other living entity can have some malicious whim and put a bullet in it. So many things, a car can strike. The point is that this death is a phenomenon which we all are waiting, and as long as we are waiting, we should be very anxious to find out why we are put here in this condition. This is the feature which we're stressing in this teaching of Krishna consciousness, because we are trying to get people to be serious about this opportunity of understanding this spiritual knowledge. The spiritual knowledge is the substantial knowledge which can explain everything. Spiritual knowledge is sometimes called the science of God. Especially this Krishna conscious philosophy is very complete science of the absolute truth. If we understand that the absolute truth is the source from which everything is emanating, then we can, going back to this idea of first cause, we can at least try and understand that the absolute truth is the self-sufficient source from which everything is coming. That means this material world is coming from the absolute truth. The material world is pictured as a perverted reflection. Just like by going to a riverbank, you can see a tree which is upside down. That tree is looking in the river. You see the reflection. That's not the real tree. The real tree is standing above that reflection. So similarly, this material world, which is limited by this condition of time, which brings with it birth, disease, old age, and death, the material world is compared to this downward tree, the roots upward and the branches down. The real tree is the spiritual manifestation, or the Transcendental Museum. Right now we're in this nasty old phenomenal museum. So by understanding very clearly the comparison or the description of this material nature and the spiritual nature, then our original consciousness can be revived. This Krishna consciousness is very attractive because Krishna is the actual eternal nomenclature of the absolute truth. Krishna means all attractive. And the absolute, as he has emanated everything, naturally he's attracting everything at the same time. He's the source of everything. So he's full. So sometimes we say that absolute mathematics is like this. 1 plus 1 equals 1. 1 minus 1 equals 1. That means in the absolute sphere, Krishna is so full that it's inconceivable. There's no limit to his potency. So he can emanate things like billions and billions of living entities, and time and space, cause and effect, all these things. These things have to be understood by a process descending from above. In other words, it's like we can be rescued from the bottom of the ocean by some men coming down with these breathing apparatus, but we can't rise from the bottom of the ocean with our lungs filled with water. Similarly, when we've completely forgotten what we are, when we have almost no consciousness for understanding the absolute truth, then the process for understanding is to accept the help of someone who is coming down, who is bringing knowledge down to our level on the platform of absolute knowledge. So we've all been very much favored by our Teacher, His Divine Grace, Swami Bhaktivedanta. Now it's our duty to try and present this process of Krishna consciousness to everyone. That we'll be doing to the best of our ability. By now, the mantra has become very famous, but it's not always very well understood. So many people know, yes, Hare Krishna, I know that, but they don't actually know it. There's so much to the teaching of Krishna consciousness that it takes a very careful study with we're trying to explain the Bhagavad Gita, which is spoken by Krishna to Arjuna. And the Bhagavad Gita is the perfect condensed form, a dictionary for looking up the information on everything, on all this material existence, for understanding exactly what it is and why it's here. So this process of chanting is one of the means recommended for it is the central means for making spiritual advancement. So we invite everybody to participate in this process by associating with us, with Krishna conscious persons, by chanting, by trying to understand the philosophy, by taking prasadam, and by being a little thoughtful, a little serious, a little bit anxious about making perfection of life. We cannot accept the rather foolish and speculative theory that when this body is finished, then will also the I, or the identity within the body, will be finished. Nobody is very much eager to die. In fact, people are often expressing a hankering that they could live forever. But the mistake is in thinking that they should want to live forever in this sort of existence like we are now. The main concentration of the existence of this body, the material body. We tend to think that this body is ourself, but with a little investigation we can see that the body is not ourself. It's an extension, but it's a temporary extension. Like when we were first born, although we didn't have a very developed mind, still we can understand that I was there within a very tiny body. Gradually the body evolved and the mind evolved. But the central factor, the I, has remained. And now we're hankering for some way to live eternally. But we're forced to adopt this rather reckless attitude of saying that we don't really care whether I die or not. This death is miserable. Everybody knows it. Sometimes people will come in and say, well, why don't you prove that there's such a thing as a soul? Well, there are two alternatives at this point. Number one, if somebody says that to me, I could kill him outright. Then he would know, yes, I have a soul. He would feel a little sick. Here I go to this whole miserable thing again. But the practical process is for him to just sit down and rationally try and understand what he is. Everything is completely explained, and simply by attentive listening, we can revive our consciousness enough to understand it. Anyway, this current theory, which is very popular, is that consciousness results from material combination, and with dissolution of this body, that this I will also be dissolved. But even from the beginning, this doesn't answer anything, because if some material combination has made this I, Still, at that point, when the I is formulated, it should be obvious that it's completely different from the material body. So the I has maybe appears that it's formulated, but actually it's appeared from some other dimension. It's just not there before, and suddenly it's there. So somebody's claiming I exist. I think I exist. So people are currently putting forward this theory then that I've come out of material combination. There's no explanation for how the matter has combined or why it's given rise to my existence. There's actually no answer to any question that anybody can ask. The only reason that this sort of theory goes unchallenged is that people's brains are so dulled by this actual brainwashing process that they're subjected to their whole lives. Because the people in the material world are understood to be here because they've made a big mistake, because they've chosen to misuse their independence. Therefore, with this understanding, it should be clear that nobody should expect that he's going to be born into a society which is full of all blissful knowledge. Like people are born and go to school, say in America, and they then think, oh, I understand everything. And if I'm miserable, then I have to go to a psychiatrist who will beat me on the head and tell me I'm happy when I'm miserable. And ultimately I'll be going for shock treatment or something like that and commit suicide. Anybody who is really thinking over the experiences that he's had, even though they have a dreamlike quality, they haven't got much reality just now, but still they happen, and there's sort of a tragic history. So many miserable things happen, so many miserable people that we couldn't help, didn't know what to do. They're just somewhere suffering or by now dead, and we don't know what happened to them. At this point, everybody should please be serious to make some profit out of this particular meeting, to understand that there's a very serious subject matter and that there's every possibility for getting some enlightenment. This should be the most coveted item. Everybody wants some knowledge. Indirectly, we can see it. Everybody wants to talk. Talking is the most enjoyable thing. They want to talk to somebody, gossip, read newspapers, go to movies. All this is, they want to witness some kind of communication because the latent ideas, they want to get some knowledge. They have a hankering for understanding what they are, but their minds are so dulled by this bad habits that have been impressed on them that they just can't make it. So obviously the process of spiritual understanding, although anybody can take it up, it'll be a gradual process. In the beginning, there simply has to be a sincere desire to do something, to actually do something to contact reality, to establish that reference point. First of all, to understand what I am. And just like there's the process of meditation described where the recommendation is that you think, am I this hand? So you think, yes, am I this hand? Well, if I cut my hand off, where would I be? I wouldn't be in the hand anymore. The hand would be useless. Therefore, I'm not that hand. The hand is my hand, or my extension. So if we consider it like that, am I this foot? Am I this leg? Am I this? No. There's some interesting statistics, not statistics, facts from the study of the brain. Scientists have tried to locate where's the mind. And the conclusion is that mind is not even contained in the brain. And the theory was that the brain was generating some electricity, and that's the mind. And the mind was identical with the soul. But there's so many cases. For example, people had brain surgery. They had huge portions of their brain removed, and their consciousness apparently wasn't impaired at all. They had full memory, and they appeared normal, much as before. And there's even one sort of horrible incident where one workman got a crowbar exploded right through his head. He was still living. He had the crowbar in his head. He walked to the doctor and had it removed. And a huge slice, or whatever cylinder of this fleshy stuff was taken out of his head. And after that, it was patched up, and he's still living. Everybody thought, well, he's still the same as before. These are freaks of nature, but the point is, the soul is so potent that even in spite of so many damages inflicted on the material and machinery of the body, the soul can manage things. We know so many stories like that. There's no sense going through all that. The point is, this material science hasn't established what life is, or where it's coming from, where it's centered. Even the greatest scientists have to go to the funeral parlor and see their friends lying there. The body's lying there, but the friend's gone. And the defeat is slapping the face of the scientist. He has to go back to the little ivory tower, ivory laboratory, and try and investigate some more. This process can go on endlessly. If anybody accepts this idea, which is so popular, that I'll just go on doing whatever work I want to enjoy myself, and that automatically everything will be solved, all the problems of life will be solved for me, and I'll be relieved of all this trouble without any effort. That's not a very good idea. So please take this Krishna conscious movement very seriously. No matter what misrepresentations are circulating, that some people are very unintelligent, but they have a tendency of talking a great deal. So the point is, there's so much false propaganda going on. Everybody that's really intelligent has to be looking out for himself to understand what is actually true. So we're offering that opportunity. Everybody can come and observe us and very scientifically experiment with us and try and get this benefit, this Krishna consciousness from us, and enjoy it, or at least make a solution to so many problems. So, are there any questions?
Yes, you can quote that about.
Could you elaborate a little bit Krishna manifested everything, and therefore well, the point is Krishna is a fountainhead of everything. Everything. What you can conceive and what you can't conceive. And that relationship stands for every entity. Therefore he's all attractive, because he has everything. He's all attractive because he is the soul? Yes. Any desirable quality is perfect in him. Therefore he's all attractive.
How a man becomes attractive? First of all, we have to understand that. Suppose a very rich man is attractive. A very intelligent man is attractive. A beautiful man is attractive. A famous man is attractive. The wise man is attracted. A renounced man is also attracted. These are attractive features. So if we analyze Krishna, we find all these three opulences of attractiveness fully present in Krishna. So, even from historical references, there is not a single person who can be compared with Krishna. Therefore, he is all attractive, and everything that we experience, that is manifestation of Krishna's energy. Parasa Sakti Vividai Vasti. His energies are differently manifested. Similarly, in Vishnu Puran also it is said, Parasam Brahmana Shakti Tathaiva Akhilam Jagat. Akhilam Jagat means the whole cosmic manifestation is a display of the multi-energies of the Supreme Personality of God. So, because he is fully energetic, therefore he is attractive and cause of all causes. These are the evidences of daily spirituality. And when he was actually present, he was attractive in so many people. In the battlefield of Kurukshetra, when he was speaking with Bhagavad Gita, the speech he delivered, although he is not present now in our vision, you cannot find in the whole world such attractive speech of wisdom. Nobody can say. What we have got practical experience about the speech which is still going on, still we are trying to understand the greatest scholars of the world, the philosophers, they are trying to understand the world. There are many, many great scholars and saintly persons all over India, but each and every one of them has tried to understand Bhagavad Gita. Even Professor Einstein, he was reading Bhagavad Gita. So his attractiveness is evidently presented by the wisdom of Bhagavad Gita. So he is all attractive, there is no doubt about it. And in the Vedic literature, we also understand Tasmin Vijnati Sarvameva Vijnatam Bhavanti. These who can understand the Supreme Personality of God, or the Absolute Soul, then Sarvameva Vijnatam Bhavanti, you can understand everything, how it is working. Because everything is display of his energy. So if you can understand how his energy is acting, then you can understand the whole cosmic manifestation. That is explained in the Vedic literature. Just like in our present, we have got practical experience with sun. The whole material world is maintained by sunlight. The planets are rotating by the heat of sunlight. The vegetation, the water, everything is being conducted by the sunlight. By scorching sunlight, the water is evaporated from the sea. It is formed into gas, clouds, and it is distributing all over the land. Then vegetation is coming and it is becoming green, yellow, many colorful. So Actually, the sun is the cause of all material manifestation. So if anyone can study what is sun, then he can understand how everything is appearing. That is practical. Similarly, sun is also not ultimate cause. The ultimate cause is Krishna. Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha. Anadiladi Govinda Sarvakarna Karana. Sarvakarna Karana means the cause of all. And the sun is described as the eye of Krishna. Jaksakshuri Savita Sakala Grahana. Sakala Grahana. Jaksakshuri Savita Sakala Grahana. Raja Samasta Asesu Teja. This sun, Brahmajitam, Hitaparita, the sun is so powerful that it is the life of every planet. Without sunlight, nobody can see anything. We are very much proud of tasting everything by seeing. I want to see. Now that seeing power is resting on the sunlight. Without sunlight, your eyes are useless. Therefore, sun is the eye for all planets. All planets mean all the residents of each and every planet. Jatkeshwari Susavita Sagalam Pranama Raja Samasta Sudamutu. Therefore, he is the king of all planets. These are described in Brahma Science. Asesate, unlimited potency or unlimited heat. There is no limit how much heat is there in the sun's glow. So that sun also rotating, just Sarvayam Brahmadisam Vidakala Chakra. That sun is also rotating under the guidance of Krishna. That is Krishna. Govindamadi so the sun is rotating, it has got its orbit, it is rotating 16,000 miles per second. It is rotating. That you cannot deny. It is a fact, it's right. So somebody has arranged how the sun is rotating. Just like your Sputnik rotates in the space by the scientists who is playing on the electronic machines in the laboratory, and the Sputnik is rotating. So why don't you think that the sun is also rotating under some guidance? How you can deny? So that is explained in Brahma Samhita. Jasthadvayam Brahmadisam Bhritapala Chakra. It has also a lifetime duration. As soon as that lifetime duration is finished, then now who gave him this lifetime duration? This moment. Just like Sriman Gautama began his speech, that without pushing up, without being moved by somebody else, and nothing can move. So he is also moving. Just not Brahmadisam Vidakala Chakra. Govindamadi Gurusam. That what he is so attractive. We must know how he does. Simply by understanding the word Krishna, we must know, analyze how Krishna is acting. That is all explained in the Bhagavad Gita. If we study Bhagavad Gita very carefully, as we can understand. Tasmin vijnate sarvamimam vijnata bhavanti. If you can simply understand the Krishna and Krishna philosophy, then you understand it. It is so fun. Question you can put next week. Now. modern days, people are very much uh, attracted by scientific knowledge. So there is complete scientific knowledge in Krishna consciousness. So if you want to understand, even from scientific point of view, his wife will be able to answer it. Question, then chant Hare Krishna.
Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna.